gunshot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. We're going to talk about the Boer War, which I was surprised to learn was not a war fought against wild pigs. Was it not?
That's true. That's true. Now, the Emu War in New Zealand actually is exactly what it sounds like.
Okay, so it actually was fought against the animal. But no, this was the Boer War fought in South Africa against the Boers, who perhaps they were wild swine for daring to oppose our glorious British Empire. Oh yes, they were swine indeed. Swine with little wooden shoes, wouldn't you say? That's a Dutch joke. The Boers were Dutch.
God save Queen Victoria.
Goodbye, everybody. No, folks, I am Tom Daly here alongside my good friend, the Doctor of History, Sean McCarthy. And this is episode 4 on the Boer War.
Yes, tell me a story.
Tell me a story. It's the name of the podcast. Yeah. And we got a story to tell, don't we, Sean?
Absolutely, we do. Tom, I remember, many years ago, the old Remembrance Day ceremonies, they often talked about the Boer War. I remember even in Nelson, they even had listed off the number of Canadians who went over to South Africa and the number who died and the number who were wounded. I know that's not something that they do today very much, and we'll get into maybe the reasons why, but I never realized until just recently that actually local guys here from Miramichi volunteered and went overseas.
All right. Now, just for the people watching, wherever you might be in the globe, we are based out of Miramichi, New Brunswick, a tiny town, or city, I guess, in a tiny province called New Brunswick on the east coast of Canada. But, this Boer War affected all of Canada, wouldn't you say? Soldiers from all across our nation volunteered for this battle, did they not?
That is true, because, of course, Canada at that time had no standing army. And so our Prime Minister, Wilfrid Laurier, wanted to kind of balance that idea of those who felt, many of whom in Quebec, felt that this was an imperial war and Canada had no business involving itself in an imperial war, with those who were, mostly in Ontario, that really felt that, no, Canada's the mother dominion. We have to prove ourselves, to the British Empire. And so it said that they would send contingents over on a volunteer basis. So I think the first contingent was sent in 1899, or mustered in 1899, and 2 companies came from, of 125 men each, 2 companies came from right here in the Maritimes.
All right, yeah, and it's interesting you say Canada doesn't have an army and all this, but they want to prove themselves to Britain, to the Empire, and this is time for little Canada to impress Mommy England. So we're going to find out here about the lengths that the Canadian soldiers went to to impress England, and also to destroy their Boer opposition. Yes. In South Africa. So let's paint a picture. We're going back, what is the year again? It's when this all starts?
1899.
1899. Okay, so 1899. Do you know if recruiting sergeants came to the area, this small town? Did they, how did...
So here, we didn't have a standing army, as I said, but we did have militias here. So the Northumberland County Militia and the 92nd, or maybe 97th, I don't quite remember the number, field battery. So there was an artillery battery here in Newcastle, and there was a county militia. So those officers were put in charge of recruiting or soliciting volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so whatever they did, it worked, because people signed up for this, and it's confusing. For me, anyway, because I was trying to figure out, other than trying to impress, I guess the British Empire was so important, and this is at the tail end of Queen Victoria's reign, so the great Mother Queen. So did they ever tell these people, or the people who signed up here, who they were actually fighting against? From what I understand, now correct me if I'm wrong, the Boers, like I said, were mostly Dutch. There's also some Germans peppered in there, and also some French, some French Protestants, the Huguenots, I believe they called, who are not friends of the Acadians. I just found out by talking to one. So there you go. Good old fight. Not even the French-speaking folk in this province are on the same page. Anyway, so you have these people, and they're living there in South Africa for quite some time, are they not? They've been there for centuries. So they're they're mostly farmers, I believe. They're working the land type thing.
Yeah, my Africanus is terrible. It doesn't even exist. But I'm pretty sure that Boer is the Africanus word for farmer.
Okay.
So that's so that's where they get their name. And of course, as the British come in and they take the Cape Colony, because of course they're a naval power and they want access underneath Africa and all this, and they slowly begin to kind of move further into South Africa, or what we know today as South Africa, that South African territory. The Boers leave for a variety of reasons, not least being the fact that the British end slavery in all of their dominions and so on and so forth in the 1830s. The Boers move inland and they found two republics, the Orange Free State and the Transvaal, and lo and behold, there's a major gold strike in the Transvaal. And of course, diamonds are also found in Boer territory as well. And the governor of the Cape Colony is one Cecil Rhodes, big industrialist and guy who's very rich and wants to get even richer. And so, there's a desire for the British to kind of take these territories so that they can, again, add some luster to the throne. Through a series of events, the Jameson Raid in 1895, basically a mustering of troops at the border and a pretext about trying to protect British subjects in Boer territory, a war is basically forced upon the Boers so that the Boers will declare war on Britain, and then Britain can retaliate.
So this whole war was basically about money. Gold, diamonds, all that stuff. Oil, lithium. It never changes, does it? It's always about something that's worth money. So, yeah, back home here, a lot of, I'm guessing, farmers, ironically enough, straight off the farm, a lot of these guys would be, sign up for this battle sort of thing and go over across that ocean to fight another batch of farmers in deepest Africa.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of there's some kind of professional men there too, and the local papers, most of the coverage from South Africa comes from Charles Anslow, who is I don't know, the son or maybe the brother of the editor of the newspaper. So he's got a name of the newspaper, so he writes back. It's funny that there's certainly a lot of economic motivation even here, because when the recruiting takes place for the second contingent in 1900, the Canadian forces have certain measurements that you have to meet up with. You have to be a certain age, certain, so big across the chest, so tall, so on and so forth. And apparently, the local guys, according to this certain source, we're not big enough through the trunk.
Really?
Big calves, not big through.
Wow. No upper body mass. Interesting.
Now, in fairness, this source also is trying to sell them some Sandow expanders, some of those old, gym equipment with the springs and the two bars.
Okay.
So he's saying,
so it's a scam.
Probably, yeah. So again, a lot of economic motivation. You have ads in the newspapers in 1899 when the war is declared, with shops saying, "We declare war on high prices." So there's a lot of economic opportunism going on throughout the community at that time.
Interesting. So people are, they're falling for it, hook, line, and sinker, aren't they? And you mentioned the Union Jack is everywhere at this point. It's just, it's the flag to get behind, back the Jack. Right. So guys, yeah.
And it's also really important. There's a lot of religious zeal that's backing all of this up too. The Reverend Snow, not the Reverend Snowball, not to be confused, but the Reverend Snow, who's an Anglican minister here, preaches about how war has often been used in the Bible
Jesus loves war. He loves it so much.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah, to reward the good and punish the evil, and so this is again. It's very strange, that you kind of have like this holy.
Look at that! It's withering already.
There you go. That's it.
The sun has set on the empire before the podcast even ended.
That's right. But yeah, and you get that, and of course you also get the Reverend William Aiken, whose son goes over, Joseph Aiken.
Now, just for people watching who don't know who that is, the Reverend Aitken would be the father of Lord Beaverbrook. And if you don't know who Lord Beaverbrook is, Google him. He's involved in World War II, very high up in Winston Churchill's cabinet as the Minister of Aircraft Production. So much earlier, this is his father, who was an old, stern Presbyterian minister, and what a guy. We'll insert a photo. I think we can do that, Dave, of the Reverend. Yeah, so at this point, you'll have a look at a picture of the Reverend William Cuthbert. Great middle name. It's got a cut in it. William Cuthbert Aitken. And if you look at that face and that beard, I tell everybody this, that is a beard from Genesis, and that is eyes from the book of Revelation. So a very intense guy, just the kind of guy that you want to have riling up all these troops before they go over.
And rile he did. Again, preaching a very powerful sermon. Even going so far as to say that the cause of England was right because England was helping the Boers, or was fighting the Boers to help the indigenous African population, with no sense of irony whatsoever. That the British were there to defend indigenous peoples, which I don't think the record really kind of bears out.
No, probably not. So, like the indigenous, the black African people, they're on both sides of this battle. Some are fighting for the Boers, and some are fighting for the British. So
That is correct.
interesting, yeah.
And of course the men leave at the train station here in Newcastle. They're mobbed by people. When the first contingent goes, there's only about half a dozen guys leave, and it's 2 a.m. So, like what often happens at 2 a.m, I mean, everybody's drunk, but apparently they're all happy drunk. They're not rambunctious drunk.
Don't you love that? Like, oh God, I gotta go to war. I gotta kill myself drinking tonight. No, they're celebrating. This is just like, the
Not sad at
happiest
all.
day of their life. No, but that's the thing I don't get, I guess, is what story were they told? Was it just a case of, oh, boy, you're going to Africa, you're going to see giraffes and zebras, and it'll be like you'll be on safari, yes, it'll be a fine time. You know what I mean? Is that the case of this? Because we hear these stories like, oh, I signed up for World War I or World War II and thought it would be an adventure. Is it the same situation?
Yeah, a lot of the letters write about, like having such a great time and it's such an adventure and so on and so forth. And again, talking about all the animals that they see, so there's certainly, that's a big motivation, it seems to me anyway, Now, then the second contingent goes, it's a little more reasonable time of night, but apparently, whereas everybody kind of got caught away with drink when the first contingent left, and the second contingent left, everybody got a little too amorous.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So an orgy broke out. Is that what you're saying?
An orgy by 1900 standards. A lot of flagrant kissing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Newspapers, reported. The soldiers were actually apparently lost all the buttons off their coats because they were like.
That happens in an orgy. Trust me, that does. You lose buttons all the time.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. What a wild time. It's just. So the other thing, I guess, these guys it's a long trip over there. You're going by boat across. Do they go directly across the ocean? You're going down, I guess, to South Africa.
Yeah, they probably stop off somewhere in West Africa for like coal or something, and then continue on down. Yeah,
it's a long freaking trip. They get there and start going to war.
Yeah. Now, a lot of the local guys were, as I mentioned, militia guys. They'd never fired a shot in anger ever before. So a lot of them kind of start off as, cooks or, orderlies or stretcher bearers or non-combat roles. But eventually, a lot of them do get involved in the actual fighting. Several of them are wounded and taken back to recover. Osborne Matheson is recommended for an award. I don't know that he ever actually gets it, but apparently had performed some daring do in the Battle of the Moder River early on in the war. But he's the only guy that's kind of mentioned as being a kind of a standard in that way.
Okay. So yeah, I guess I'm going to jump right in and talk about the thing that stood out to me when I was doing my research for the Boer War. We see concentration camps appear, and now these are not prisoner of war camps. These are not the ones where we captured the enemy and we put them away in a cage or whatever and give them a meal or whatever. But they're rounding up women and children and locking them in these concentration camps, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
Yes. So by about 1901, the military part of the war, the British believe it's over. They've won a lot of major battles. They've relieved the Boers had kind of besieged 3 sites. It's at the first of the conflict. All those sieges are lifted. The Boer army has been beaten in the field, but they refuse to surrender. They still continue on a guerrilla campaign. So the British decide that the thing to do is, while they're fighting these guerrillas, is to round up all of the women and children and elderly and kind of bring them into these camps so that they can't aid the guerrillas. So they burn farms and all of this. And again, to your point earlier, the Canadian contingent definitely takes part in these actions. There's letters written in the local newspapers about cheering on commanders who burn farms wherever they go, and so there's certainly a sense of it really is.
Yeah.
Now these camps are not very well run, and as a result, there is a great deal of disease and death in these camps because again they're not properly provisioned or looked after, and this becomes really a national shame for Britain and really something that the rest of Europe condemns them for their actions in this war. And there's a lot of condemnation within Britain itself.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So just to get an idea of what's going on in Britain at the time, Victoria dies in 1901, doesn't she? So interesting. This ends in 1902. Is that a big thing when Victoria dies? It's just oh God, time to mourn instead and put everything on hold, or they just keep fighting, or what?
Well, I think by that point, as I say, kind of the guerrilla campaign is happening.
It's a guerrilla campaign, okay.
But yeah, there's certainly it's a huge shock.
Yeah.
One of the things actually that comes out of this is a lot of the outrage is directed toward the new king, Edward VII.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Who's to blame? I guess are they blaming the royals more for this, or who's the prime minister in Britain at this time? I don't even know.
So 1902, I guess it would be Arthur Balfour. I think the Conservatives were in power.
At the end. So who's in at the start? I don't know. It's
so I don't know if Lord Salisbury is still the prime minister in 1899, or if Balfour has succeeded him at that point. But yeah.
Because I guess that's who are the people blaming at this point? Would be the thing when things start going south, and south they did go.
For sure.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's so hard to wrap my mind about it. And again, we like to say about what heroes we had here in Canada for in World War I and World War II, but they did some shady stuff as well too, and that's going to be coming out probably down the road. But this Boer War, you have these guys who are there, committing war crimes, basically these doing horrible things just for the sake of to prove that they're loyal, I guess, to the empire and and following orders.
It's certainly it's not, and I wonder if that's the reason maybe why we don't talk a lot about the Boer War is because we were again it's a war for imperial gain rather than a war for just causes such as we understand them in hindsight.
Yeah, no, I think all wars are a waste of time. And maybe it's been Married to a Swede has done that to me. It made me more neutral than I've probably ever been. Yeah. And at the end, for all of the sacrifices Canada's made to the British Empire going back so far, what do we get out of it in the end? This Commonwealth, this thing, what is that? You know what I mean? I'm just thinking, and this is the first thing that comes to mind was visiting London for the first time and waiting in that lineup for close to 2 hours, you know what I mean? And we were on the flight, these are all Canadians with Canadian passports, waiting and waiting and waiting and getting grilled by the most Cockney idiot you could imagine. Oi, what brings you here? Oh, I'm just visiting. First time here. Why did it take you so long? Why didn't you come years ago? What? Well, no. I had money to come down. I never had that before. And the funny thing was, who didn't have to do that was the plane from Berlin. Oh, the Germans. Yes, they just got flashed their passport, and they marched right on in. And I'm just watching German after German after German marching right on into London. And here, a line of Canadians waiting and waiting and waiting for hours. So, you know what I mean? There should be. I'm going off on a tangent now, but whatever. There should be something there for a country like Britain who's made these sacrifices to the Commonwealth. And I guess that's what I'm saying. If our ancestors could throw a bunch of people in concentration camps, we should at least be allowed to get into England as easy as the Germans were allowed to get in back in 2013.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I entirely agree with that sentiment, but anyway, I'm sure we can talk about that in greater detail at another time.
All right, so back to the Boer War, this mess. These guys come back from the Boer War. Let's fast forward to 1902, or we have a poem, actually. We should read this. Should be from
Sure.
Lord Beaverbrook's brother?
Yes.
All right, so Lord Beaverbrook's brother, Joseph, who went by Magnus, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes also written as Mons, M-A-A-U-N-S.
Because Joseph and Magnus, those names are so similar.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's it's very strange. But writes a poem about what it was like to be in the ranks in the Boer War. So, that a soldier's life is a merry one is what the people say. But when you're short on rations, well, it isn't half so gay. And you can't live fat on Bloemfontein on half a bob a day. And Bloemfontein, for those who aren't aware, is the capital, I think, of the Transvaal or the Orange Free State. One of the, anyway, but is the capital city in one of the Boer republics. If you have a present sent from home, you can take a tip from me. It's been commandeered by somebody, and it's one you'll never see. So each mail arrives, you ask, where can that parcel be? And when you see the water cart and rush up for a drink, think you're going to get a quencher, at least that's what you think. But it's only there for ornament, and you're threatened with the clink. By night we had to stand the cold, by day we stood the heat. We got lots of duty, but not very much to eat. We had 2 biscuits daily, some tea, and half-cooked meat. We're rugged in appearance, and of tint distinctly brown. We're bearded and we're dirty, as well as broken down. So why the dickens don't they send our kit bags from Cape Town? So again, that's I think, kind of trying to make light of what is certainly a very difficult situation, being in the ranks in South Africa at that time.
And a very early food review, too.
Yeah, I guess so. That's true. That's true. Yeah, half-cooked meat and biscuits.
Exactly. So, and their stuff was, you were telling me, I think it was, that the supplies or gifts they were receiving, I guess, arrived so late. Everything was spoiled and rotten. The stuff they're supposed to get at Christmas, didn't they get it like in the...
They get it Easter.
There we go, yeah. So the home-baked cookies were not in the best of shape by then.
But the tobacco was good.
That's all it really matters.
I guess so. That's it.
Yeah, if you can't smoke it or drink it and feel something, the hell with it. Right. So, all right. So these guys now come back from the war. Do we know what kind of shape they're in at this point? Is it just back to normal work as usual, or?
Well, I don't know about everybody, but I know that Hubert Sinclair, who is the son of Everett Sinclair, the man the Sinclair Rink was named after, the lumber baron on the Northwest Miramichi, he must have gotten very ill or something had happened to him, because apparently he didn't stay here very long, and he had to move to New Mexico because the humidity was better for him with his lungs or whatever. He couldn't stay in this kind of damp atmosphere here. The humidity wasn't good for his lungs, pardon me. The dry heat in New Mexico and Arizona, that area, he needed to stay there. So it's probably one of the lingering effects. Physically, and I'm sure there was a lot of lingering effects psychologically as well from the service there. Now, Tom, you've spoken about is it Jimmy Reagan who was involved in that war, and then also with the First World War?
I'm not sure. That's the story I had heard. Again, there's a local fellow from the Semi-Wagon Ridge, where I was from, who was actually on his way back from the Boer War, and then they went, lived as a farmer for a while, and then enlisted in the First World War too, or whatever. So it's wild. Some guys, I guess, I don't know if they liked the experience or if they had got a taste for the battle or something, and wanted to go back, or was it that again that loyalty to the British crown and all that? And
I suppose too in the military, I didn't think of this earlier, but there's a steady wage.
that's
as
the
well.
big thing,
So there might be that too.
That's that's got to be discussed for sure, because money makes you do crazy things, and at this time, life is rough for these guys. There's not a lot of money coming in, and they're probably going to they're sacrificing and risking their own life to look after their parents or younger siblings or things like that, because the money's getting sent back. Do you know the amounts by any chance for this Boer War? Like how many dollars or pounds are going to the...
No, I can't say as I do.
No.
I know that when the second contingent left, they took up a collection around Newcastle, and everybody got $15.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
So, and that would be, I'm assuming that would be kind of a treat on top of wages. So they're not making $15,
No.
in a single day for sure. They're probably going to take them a long time to earn that kind of money as a soldier.
Well, it's good to know that the imperial overlords who are getting the gold and the diamonds, and these guys are getting $15. Doesn't that make you feel good? Yeah. Wild stuff.
We did have one casualty in that war. So Gordon McNaughton from Black River died as a result of typhoid fever in South Africa. He was part of the South African Constabulary, so basically a paramilitary police force that was recruited in South Africa, but also throughout the British Empire. The British had the idea that they would come and basically kind of provide law and order, something like the RCMP was doing. But they ended up having to fight quite a bit because of the guerrilla nature of the conflict. But he was struck down by typhoid fever. There was a fountain in Chatham in his honor, but I think the plaque from that is now part of the cenotaph in Chatham. So if you're in Chatham, you can see that.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so again, this is, how many hours do you spend reading up on the Boer War? Anyway, this is something when you're becoming the doctor of history. You must have done a lot of time on this.
Yeah, quite a few. More so recently, I've been kind of trying to organize, all of the material that I can find on it, because again, I think it is a forgotten conflict, and one that obviously we were very involved with. Huge celebrations here, or when victories were announced. People got the day off school, businesses closed for the day, for big celebrations. I think on the 1st of July, 1900, or maybe 1901, there was captured, flags and a gun from South Africa that were part of the Canada Day Parade. So...
Well, this goes back to the guy saying, take anything you want. Yeah. What was that story?
Hubert Sinclair wrote in his book, wrote to his mother, so basically saying, you can steal, whatever. You can take whatever you want.
Just take it.
Yeah. There's somebody else, I can't remember who, writes about that, that everything's great, but the people are very nice, but they're very drab, and I don't think they like us, but they appreciate our sympathy or whatever. So again, it's not great for sure. The idea that these guys are there and are kind of being put up with, by settlers, whose farms they have burned.
Yeah, that would cause some bad blood, I would think. You burn down somebody's farm.
Yeah. So
farming can't be very easy in South Africa either. That feels like a dry climate to me. So
yeah, I'm not sure whether it was. I'm assuming it would be livestock, but I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So, anything else to add to this? You've done so much more research in school and whatnot than I have. But I just like reading up a little bit, trying to get behind. Shawn deals with the history and the facts and all that, and I deal with emotion. And the first thing that came to mind is like, oh, this is a train wreck. This is not good. When you're burning down farms and throwing women and children, old people in concentration camps, it's going to be hard to put a positive spin on this. So. No,
for sure. And I think it's a situation where like this is the last of Queen Victoria's Little Wars, which is a book that I found over the years. Apparently, every year the Queen Victoria was queen, the British Army was engaged somewhere fighting someone.
A little war, because you don't want a big war. You don't want to go up against somebody who can really take it to you. And that's the point. The weird thing with this Boer War, too. Even though they're a mix of French and Dutch and German, it's not like, the Germans or the Dutch or any of these European powers are helping them, are they?
That's true. The Boers are buying goods from other European powers.
So they've got no one. They've got none of the big powers on their side. Yeah. Wow.
But it's interesting because, of course, again, there's all this outrage. And a lot of this is to do with the fact that, the British are doing this to other Europeans. It's not like the British invented this in 1899. They've been doing, the British Empire has been doing terrible things to people for, hundreds of years by this point.
Of course.
But now they're doing it to other Europeans. And so, and now now it becomes a problem, right? So the fact that, again, we never hear about the fact, as you mentioned earlier, that you have indigenous black Africans fighting, on both sides, and I mean, tens of thousands of them die. Those are not statistics that are often spoken about either. So, but yeah.
Well, I guess the funny thing is, not the ironic thing, the very darkly funny thing, I guess, is Britain eventually does turn over power to these Boers, do they not? And
they do. Almost immediately.
Almost immediately. Okay. So now, fast forward in time, from what I understand, they weren't the best to the black folk down in Africa, were they? If you're familiar with terms like apartheid and all that, yeah. So,
interestingly enough, at the start of the First World War, there is a thought in South Africa that maybe, we'll just basically take up arms and fight with the Germans, and fight against Britain.
There we go.
Because it was only a dozen years. It was only a dozen years before that.
Of course, it makes sense.
They're fighting the British, so there is a small rebellion there that's put down.
Can't trust anyone, can you?
Well, it's geopolitics is very.
You really can't.
Is very complicated for sure. But and of course there were supporters of the Boers here in Miramichi. They did not get very well treated, both in the press but also physically. A lot of them were beaten up and by those bold defenders of empire.
All these Irish guys who left during the famine.
Probably.
What would be parents or grandparents probably fled it. Fight hard for the British Empire, because that's the funny thing. All these Irish and Scottish who were never on the best of terms with the crown. Oh my God.
That's it.
All right, Shawn. Anything else before we wrap this one up?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And we got to point out this beautiful helmet
the pith
right
helmet.
here, the pith helmet. So this is what the officers would have worn, is it not? Or
I think the men too.
the men too? Okay, they all had this.
The officers might have had the white one.
Of course. It's always the guy with the white hat you got to watch out for, whether you're in the military or working on the roads. The guy with the white hat is you got to watch out for. All right. Oh, crap. There we go. All right. Well, folks, thank you very much for listening to this episode, number 4 on the Boer War, our experience here close to home. And if you happen to be watching this somewhere across Canada, let us know in the comments what you've heard about the Boer War. Was it a good thing, if you're willing to debate that, or was it, like I feel, just a mess that we probably shouldn't have been involved in at all?
And be sure to have a look at the offerings by our producer, the man behind the camera, Creepy Dave Jardine, who is, again, doing coffee doodles, very, very interesting stuff. And would mean a lot to us if you'd give him a watch as well. Like I say, he does some great work in front of the camera as well as behind.
See you, everybody.